Good day, learners. Welcome to Technical Mathematics lesson. My name is Mathule Godfrey Latakomu, and this lesson is brought to you by Sci-Bono Discovery Center in collaboration with Gauteng Department of Education. Welcome back, grade 11s. Today's lesson we are going to be dealing with finance, growth and decay. Looking at our lesson objectives. At the end of this lesson, learners must be able to read and understand the scenario or the statement given. The second one, you have to use the timeline to interpret the scenario or the statement and calculate compound interest using different periods, and also calculate the nominal and effective interest rates. So that's what we will be dealing with in our today's lesson. Moving straight to our finance of different periods. So here we have a table that explains the different periods on how interest is charged. So now we're looking at our table here. We can see that we have a column there for interest compounded, and also showing in terms of numbers. And then now we can see that when we are dealing with the period that is affected by different periods, your I will be affected and also your N, it will be affected. Remember, N is the number of years. So now, looking at our table there, the first row there we have annually. When they're saying the interest is charged annually, it means the interest is charged only once a year, correct? Then your different compound, it will be only one. Remember, it's annually. Annually, it means it's only once a year, correct? Then now, the second one, when they're saying semi-annually, it means the interest is charged only 2 times a year. Semi-annually is 2 times a year. And remember, there can be other words that can describe the semi-annually. Sometimes they can tell you about your the one that describes semi-annually. They can say biannual, or they can say half yearly. So those two things, they also describe the interest that is being charged 2 times a year. And remember, with different periods, what then do? We divide our interest rate by 2 and we multiply the number of year by 2. So when we're talking about a quarter, remember, in terms of our quarters in a year, there are 4. We have term 1, term 2, term 3 and term 4. So when we are talking about quarters, it means the interest is charged 4 times a year. Then now we have what we call bi-monthly. How to get? When they're saying bi-monthly, it means your interest is charged 6 times a year. Then we have also monthly. Monthly, remember, we have 12 months in a year. So the interest will be charged each and every month. Then we also have semi-monthly, which is 24 times in a year. Remember, when we're saying semi-monthly, it means each and every month the interest is charged twice. So you're saying 2 times 12, you get 24. Then bi-weekly, then we also have 26. And remember, your interest will be charged weekly. We have 52 weeks in a year, and then daily we're using 365. And remember, we exclude the leap year on that one, correct? So that's how you should remember the terms of different periods on how your interest will be charged. So in us understanding this table, then now we can move forward. So now we are going to be looking at nominal and effective interest rate. Nominal and effective interest rate, grade 11. Remember, you are having a formula sheet. We call it the information sheet in technical mathematics. So this formula, it is there in the information sheet. So what you need to understand is how to use it and how to identify it. Those are the two important things. But otherwise, it is given to you in the information sheet. Whether you write your test or you write your exam, you will always find your this formula in the information sheet. So in the formula sheet, they will be using the abbreviations of I with subscript EFF. So now you know that is your effective interest rate. And then the other one of nominal rate, it will be I and then subscript norm. So that you always know that the effective interest rate, it will be bigger than your nominal interest rate. And remember, M on this formula, it's representing different period. And remember, when we're talking about different period, is what we've spoken about in this slide. Different period, remember, they are represented by the letter M. And then by me saying that, it means in your formula sheet or information sheet, the different period is represented by your letter M. So now, looking at our first activity, remember we have to read our statement with understanding because this is financial mathematics. And as we're reading our statement, we also have to analyze what is it that they are looking for. So now, the statement goes as follows, or the question goes as follows. The nominal interest rate charged is 8% per annum, compounded monthly. You can see that. And then they're saying you must now calculate the annual effective interest rate charged. Correct. So now what is happening here is that we are given, remember they are saying nominal rate. Nominal interest rate is 8%. It means we are given an I norm, which is your 8%. And we always tell learners that if you are given your interest rate like that, you will always divide it by 100, then you will get your what? You will say 8 divided by 100, then you will get 0.08. Right? And then now, we also need to understand what is our different period, correct? How is interest charged in this particular question? They say it compounded monthly, and we know that when it says compounded monthly, we have 12 months in a year, then it will be 12. So those are the two things that you need for you to utilize the formula for effective interest rate. And remember, in the formula we have I effective, it's equal to open bracket 1 plus I norm divided by M to the power of M minus 1. That is our formula there. Then from our formula, remember the substitution, it needs to be very accurate. The substitution. So as we substitute there, you have to substitute your I norm, which is 0.08. And then now our M, remember we said is different period, which is 12 because it's charged monthly. So that's how you do your substitution. Then from there, what are you going to do? You are just going to punch this straight to your calculator. So if we use our calculator here, you can also use your calculator to check the answers for yourself as well. So if we use our calculator there, you will realize that the interest, it will be 0.08299, correct? So now here you are not done with calculating. Remember, it must be in terms of percentages, so we multiply here by 100, correct? And when we multiply that by 100, it means now, therefore, your I effective, it will be, then now you will see 0.08299. Then you multiply it by 100, then you realize that your effective interest rate, it will be 8.3%, correct? So that's how you calculate your effective interest rate charged, correct? So it's as simple as that. And remember, as we mark this type of a question, your first question, normally we will say it must go to your formula for you to pick the correct formula. And then the second mark, it must go to your substitution, the correct substitution. Remember, when I'm talking about substitution, is the correct substitution of your interest, your nominal interest rate, and also the different period. Then your final now mark will go to the answer. So that's how you will be accumulating your 3 marks in this type of a question. Okay, moving forward now, we go and look at our second activity. In the second activity, they are saying an investment earns an interest at the rate of 7% per year, compound half yearly, correct? Then now they're saying we must calculate the effective yearly interest rate of this investment. So now you are given an I norm, correct? They didn't specifically tell you that it's your nominal interest rate. But looking at the question that says you must calculate the effective yearly interest, it means we are looking for the effective interest rate. So now we do the same thing. You identified your I nominal, which is 7. We divide it by 100. Then we're gonna get 0.07. Then now the interest they say is charged half yearly. Remember, half yearly, our different period, it means is 2 times a year. It means each and every 6 months the interest is being charged there. So now what we're doing here, we write our formula, 1 plus I norm all over m to the power of m minus 1. Remember, this formula, it must be accurate as you rewrite it from your information sheet. Then now we can deal with our substitution. We have to substitute there, minus 1. So let's deal with our substitution there. I norm, we agree that is 0.07. Then we have 2 there and 2 there, since it is half yearly. Then from there, what do? We have to go and punch it in our calculator. So if we punch it in our calculator, we are going to have 0.071225, right? Then you multiply this by 100. When you multiply by 100, then your I interest, the effective yearly interest, it will be 7.12%, correct? It will be 7.12%. And remember, they will always tell you that you must round off to 2 decimal place unless stated otherwise. That is one of our instructions there in the instructions of the question paper. So that is how now you calculate your effective interest rate in activity 2. So now looking at our next activity, activity 3. So with activity 3, remember, we are given the following now. They're saying the annual effective interest rate charged is 8.5%. Calculate the nominal interest rate charged per annum if it is compounded quarterly. So now we are now given the effective interest rate. So now remember, in our formula we have effective interest rate, which is equal to 1 plus your I norm all over m to the power of m minus 1. So now in this case, now you can see that we are now given the effective interest rate. We have our effective interest rate. So I effective, it's equal to 8.5. And if you divide that by 100, remember you will get 0.085. And your different period, remember they said here is compounded quarterly, and quarterly we agreed from our table that is 4 times a year. Correct? Now what do we have to do here? We have to calculate our nominal interest rate. So how do we do that? You start by substitution. Remember we have 0.085 as our I effective into 1 plus the I norm. We don't know it, that's what we are calculating for. But we know that our different period there, they're saying is compounded quarterly, which is 4. Then from this we have to now use our mathematical operations. Remember, with mathematical operations, that's the important part where now learners have to pay attention, because you have to understand when do I transpose, when do I multiply, where do I divide, or when do I remove the powers by introducing the root sign. So now you can see that the first thing that you need to do is to get rid of this -1. It means I will transpose it to the left hand side, and as I transpose it, I will have 0.085 plus 1, it's equal to, correct? Then it will be 1 plus I norm all over 4 to the power of 4. Then now if you're saying 0.085 plus 1, you are going to get 1.085. So you are going to get 1.085. It's equal to, right? Then now we can look into our root sign there to see, with our root sign, remember the power that we need to remove there is the power of 4. So it means it will be 4th root. And also this side it will be 4th root, because our aim now is to remove this power of 4 there, or the exponent of 4 there. So that's how it will be removed. So also here we are going to have the power of 4. Correct? Then moving forward, what will happen here? It will say I will have 1 plus I norm all over 4. So now what will happen from here? I will still have to take this 1 and transpose it. And make no mistake, that one is not going to be inside the square root. So here you're going to have 4 root of 1,085 minus 1, it's equal to your I norm divided by 4. See that one? Then now, what will happen from here? We will get rid of that 4. Remember, you have your 4th root of 1,085 minus 1. Then this side, remember, we have I norm all over 4. So for us to remove the denominator, we can either cross multiply or multiply both sides by 4. So I will opt for this one of multiplying both sides by 4. Then you know that your 4 will cancel 4 there. Then your I norm, it will be what? Now you can go and punch your calculator. So you're going to have 4 into now our 4th root of, it will be 4 open bracket, then we have the 4th root, of 1,085 minus 1, correct? So when you punch that in your calculator, you are going to get 0,00824, correct? Then from there, you will multiply here by 100. Then as you multiply it by 100, then you will know that your nominal interest rate is going to be 8.24%. It's going to be 8.24%. That will be your nominal interest rate. So remember, we have mentioned that your effective interest rate will always be bigger than your nominal interest rate. So you can see that your nominal interest rate is small as 8.24, and then your effective interest rate was 8.5. So those are the things that you have to bear in mind as you are calculating this. But remember, the method is the same. You must know when to transpose, know where to apply the root sign, know where to multiply. So it's just basic mathematical operations there. So now let's look at our activity 4. So in activity 4, we basically going to do the very same exercise that we have done in our previous slides or activity. So now you can pause it a bit, do it, see if you understand, then play it to check your answer. So now we can pause the video a bit and then deal with it. But now moving forward, we have the annual effective interest rate charged by a financial institution is 6.7%, correct? Calculate the nominal interest rate charged per annum if compounded monthly, correct? So now we have the effective interest rate as 6.7%, and now the interest different periods is just compounded monthly, which is M is equal to 12. Excuse me. So now we know that we're going to have our formula I effective is equal to 1 plus I norm all over M to the power of M minus 1. Then we can deal with our substitution there. we will have 0,067. Remember, when I divide here by 100, I will get 0,067. So now it will be into 1 plus. Your I-norm is what we are looking for. We don't know it. Correct? But our M now, we know that our interest is charged. Our interest is charged 12 times a year. So we have to apply the very same operations that we have applied in our previous activity. So we start by this. We're going to transpose this -1 to the other side. We're going to have 0,067 plus 1. It's equal to 1 plus I-norm all over 12 to the power of 12, correct? Then now what are we removing now? We are removing that exponent of 12 by the root of 12 here, also the root of 12 there. So what do we do now? We are going to cancel because we are removing them. Then now we will be left with 12th root of 12th root of, we add what is inside there is going to be 1,067. It's equal to 1 plus I-norm all over 12. Correct? Then remember, we still have to transpose this one to the left hand side. So as we transpose, we are going to have 12 root of, let's write it properly there. So we are going to have 12th root of 1,067, correct, minus 1, it's equal to I-norm divided by 12. So we divide and we multiply both sides by 12 to remove our denominator. So now our denominator will cancel each other there. So now your I-norm, as we are going to punch a calculator, you are going to have 12, and then we also have the root of 12 all over 1,067 minus 1. So now you will have 0,06502, correct? Then we multiply that by 100. You multiply it by 100. As you multiply it by 100, it will give you 6.52%. Then that's how you calculate your nominal interest rate. I hope you have got that one right. Then that's basically what you should be doing when you are required to calculate the nominal interest rate and effective interest rate. Okay, moving forward, we still remind ourselves about this table of the interest compounded, correct? We know that when it's 1, it means its interest is charged once, and then the second one is 2. It means, remember, it's semi-annually, bi-annually, half-yearly is 2. Then we have 4 that represent quarterly interest charged 4 times a year. And we also have bi-monthly, monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, weekly, and daily. Now, remember with this one, we said it affects our interest, which is I, and it also affects the number of years. Where we see I, we will divide it by different period, and then where we see n, we multiply it also by different of periods. So now we have this type of a formula, but this formula is not on our formula sheet. Correct? In our formula sheet, you'll only have the formula that looks like this. A is equal to P into 1 plus I to the power of n. That is the formula for compound interest. But the one where now we are including the different periods where we divide I and we multiply n is not there. You just have to know that the minute we are talking about compounded monthly, compounded annually, compounded daily, or compounded biannually, half yearly, you have to divide your interest by the number of different periods and also multiply the number of years by that. So that formula is not there in the formula sheet, but you only need to understand the concepts. So now we are moving to the what our variables mean there. You can see that from their formula, A is accumulated final amount, and then P is your principal, which is the initial amount, and then I is your interest rate, N is number of years, and M is different periods. So now I hope you understand this type of the formula. So now let's look at our practice. See how do we now utilize our compound formula when the interest is affected by different periods. So now the question says 25,000 is invested at an interest rate of 9.6% per annum, compounded quarterly. Correct? Determine the value of the investment at the end of 7 years. The simple question. Correct? So now what happens here? Remember, we are talking about the compound formula here. We are having A, it's equal to P 1 plus. Remember, we have to divide by M and also multiply our number of years by M. And that M means different periods. Why are we saying so? Because it's compounded quarterly. And we know that compounded quarterly means 4 times a year. Then you have your I, which is 9.6%. Then if you know that you divide it by 100, you will get 0.096. Then we have N, that is represented by number of years, which is 7. Then we have our initial amount that is deposited there, which is P. So those are the things that you need for you to substitute in this formula. So as we substitute in this formula, we're going to have 25,000 into 1 plus. Your interest now is 0.096 all over 4 to the power of 7 multiplied by 4. That is as simple as ABC. You have seen my substitution there. So now, if we punch this in a calculator, you will just say 25,000 into 1 plus 0.096 divided by 4 all to the power of 7 multiplied by 4, because remember it's 4 for 7 years. And the amount that you are going to get there as your answer is going to be your 46, not 46, sorry. It's not 46. It's supposed to be 48,566 rand, 72 cents. So that's how you are going to use that type of a formula. Right. So now we can move forward. Let's now look at our activity 1. So in this type of activity, remember, it's always advisable for learners to use timeline so that they can understand this type of or analyze this type of questions properly. And in the exam, this type of questions, they carry a lot of marks, plus minus 6 marks. Sometimes it can be 5, 6, 7, or 8 marks. So we just have to be careful when we deal with this type of questions. Read your statement with understanding, analyze it using your timeline, then you are going to collect marks. Okay, let's read through our statement. So they're saying Timo wants to buy a welding machine in 5 years' time. That will cost 23,000 rand. He decided to invest 15,000 in an investment account. So now the scenario there is clear that Timo wants to buy a welding machine in 5 years' time. It means 5 years from now. Then the machine will cost 23,000. It means in 5 years' time the machine will cost 23,000. Then now he wants to invest the amount of money, which is 15,000 rand, in the account. For how many years? For 5 years. So now our first bullet there, it says interest rate for the first 3 years is 8.5% per annum, compounded quarterly. Then the second bullet says the interest rate for the next 2 years is 6% per annum, compounded semi-annually. Correct. So now that is our statement there. So now, what is it that we do at first? Remember, I've spoken about the first question says we must determine whether the value of the investment at the end of 5 years will be enough to buy the welding machine. Remember, this question, it requires you to answer it and also give a conclusion. Remember, they said determine whether. It means the amount it can be reached or it might not be reached as Timo invests. So now remember, we start with our timeline. It's very important for learners to understand this timeline. Remember, we are investing it with within 5 years, correct? So now, with our timeline, we have the n represent the number of years. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So all learners should be able to analyze this the scenario on a number line. So now remember, they said at initial the 15,000 was deposited, correct? At the beginning we deposited 15,000. Then the first bullet, now it says the interest for the first 3 years, it was 8.5% per annum, compounded quarterly. It means from year 1 up until the 3rd year, your interest is 8.5%, correct? And then it's charged how? Compounded quarterly, which is 4. That's how we analyze our situation there. I mean our statement. So now the second bullet says the interest for the next 2 years now is changed to 6% per annum, compounded semi-annually. Remember, quarterly is 4, semi-annually it means is 2. So now it means from the 3rd year to the 5th year, then the interest it changed to 6% and it was compounded semi-annually, which is 2. So you see how we have analyzed our scenario there. So now we start going to calculate. When we start calculating now, we're going to say for the first 3 years, we need to know the amount of money for the first 3 years because it has different periods and different interest within the 5 years. So we now calculate the amount for the first 3 years. So for the first 3 years, remember we're going to have our formula there, which is 1 I divided by m to the power of m. So as we calculate that, we're going to substitute our deposited money, which is 15,000. Then we're going to have, remember, we're going to have 0,085. If you see 8,5 divided by 100. Then it was compounded quarterly, which is 4. For how many years? For the first 3 years. Then you also multiply it by 4. So now we want to know what is our amount there. If you say 15,000 into 1 plus 0,085 all over 4 to the power of 3 multiplied by 4. So the amount of money that you are going to get there is 19,305 rand, comma 28 cent. Correct? Now it means for the first 3 years, the amount that is there is going to be 19,305,28 cent. That is the amount that we are having at the end of the 3rd year. Correct? So now, what is happening now? We are going now to calculate for the next 2 years. Remember, for the next 2 years is just the remaining years from year 3 up until year 5. So now, how are we going to deal with that? We are still going to see the next 2 years. The next 2 years, then what do we do there? We still utilize the very same formula, but remember our amount there was 19,305,28 cent. Correct? And then we have 1 plus. Remember now our interest changed. The interest changed to 6% per annum compounded semi-annually. So now it's going to be 0,06 all over 2 to the power of 2 multiplied by 2 because it's the remaining 2 years. Then now if you punch that in a calculator, we are going to get 19,305,28 cent into 1 plus 0,60 divided by 2 to the power of 2 multiplied by 2. Then we are going to get 21,728 rand, 26 cents. Correct? So that is the amount of money that Timo will have at the end of 5 years. Remember, the question says, determine whether the value of the investment at the end of 5 years will be enough to buy the welding machine. So now, the value of the machine in 5 years' time, it will be 23,000. And as we calculate the invested amount, we have 21,728 rand. So now you have to conclude. You could say, therefore, it means that he won't have enough. He won't have enough money to buy the machine. So that's how you can conclude, or you could say he won't have enough money. So that statement now, it also carries a marks, because the question, it needs a conclusion. It means 1 mark will go to that statement. So now, the conclusion. 1 mark will go to conclusion, and remember this question is 5 marks. Correct? So now it means you will get your first 2 marks there, and then also the next 2 marks there. Then with your conclusion, you will have 5 marks. You will have 5 marks. So remember the formula and substitute the correct substitution in the correct formula and the answers. Correct? That's how you determine or you calculate this type of a question. So let's look at the 1.1.2. Now it says, hence, calculate the total interest earned by the investment over 5 years. So remember, when it says hence, it means you must go back to your previous question, and then you use the answer of the previous question to determine the answer for this one. So total interest earned. Total interest, it's equal to, remember, it's what we have accumulated. What we have accumulated over 5 years is what? Is 21,728 rand and 26 cents. Correct? We subtract the money that was deposited, which is what? Which is 15,000. Then now we are going to get our interest earned over 5 years, which is the interest that is earned is 6,728 rand, so that is the interest earned for 2 marks. Remember, how do you accumulate your 2 marks is the method and the answer. Correct? That's how you accumulate your 2 marks there. So this type of a question, if you can look at it, it has 7 marks. It has 7 marks. And it is easy for you to get that 7 marks when you read your statement properly with understanding and analyzing it using your timeline. So now we're going to our second activity. Remember, this type of questions, they require you to have a clear understanding of the scenario and then interpret it using the timeline, because it is important when you're doing it that way, and it's easy for you to understand what is actually happening there. So now it goes as follows. A municipality plans to upgrade a clinic in 5 years' time, starting on the 1st of February 2028. Then the upgrade will cost the upgrade cost will be 95,000. Correct? Here we are talking about a municipality that plans to upgrade their clinic in 5 years' time. Then they will start upgrading their clinic in 2028. Correct? Now, and the upgrade money that will cost will be 95,000. How to get? So now, the information below now is how the investment goes. The municipality plans to invest in a savings account as follows. Correct? So bullet number 1, it says 30,000 is to be invested on the 1st of February 2023. So now it means the initial amount that will be invested at the beginning is 30,000. The second bullet says a further 20,000 is to be invested on 1 February 2025. Correct? Then it says Another amount of 10,000 is to be invested on the 1st February 2026. Then the interest rate for the first 2 years will be 10% per annum compounded monthly. Then thereafter, the interest rate will change to 12% per annum compounded semi-annually. So you can see that this information that is given here, it just needs you to draw a number line and analyze it from there. Correct, because as you read through those bullets, the money is invested at the beginning of the investment, and then some amount of money are still deposited throughout the investment. So we will have to check how do we deal with such question. So the question says, determine whether the municipality could be able to save enough money for the clinic upgrade at the end of 5-year investment period for 6 marks. So now, the first thing that you start with, learners, remember, is to draw your timeline. So let's do that. We're drawing our timeline for 5 years. So what is happening there? Let's just extend our line for our timeline. So we have year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So we have year 1, year 2, year 3, your year number 4, and year number 5. So for you to understand it better, because here, remember, we are talking about the years from 2023 and to 2028. So what do we do now? We're going to say the first one is 2023, then we have 2024, then we have 2025, then you will have 2026, 2027, and 2028. So from 2023 to 2028, that is your 5-year period, correct? Then we go back and now we start analyzing. The first amount that was deposited there, it was 30,000, correct? For they're saying 30,000 is invested, correct? The second bullet now, it says a further 20,000 is invested February 2025. It means from 2023 to 2025 is 2 years. It means thereby 2 years, we now add what? We add another 20,000. You see what I'm doing? Then it means you go to the third bullet and they say the third amount of 10,000 to be invested in 2026. So it means also in 2026 there was an amount of money that was added into that account. Correct. Now, those are the amount of monies that are invested, correct, in that account, or are deposited in that account. So now, let's now check the interest, bullet 4 and bullet 5. So it says, the interest rate for the first 2 years is 10% per annum compounded monthly. It means for the first 2 years, for the first 2 years, right, your interest there, I, is going to be what? Is 10%. And your different period, because they're saying it's compounded monthly, it means it's going to be 12 for the first 2 years, right? Then now, thereafter, they are saying the interest will be, the interest will change to 12% per annum compounded annually. It means for the remaining, let's see, it says, yes, compounded semi-annually. It means for the remaining years, which is 3 years, For the remaining 3 years, now your interest has changed to what? To 12%. And then different period is semi-annually. Semi-annually. It means it's 2 times a year. So now, I believe by this timeline now you understand how you have to calculate your investment. So remember now, it means we have to firstly calculate the investment for the first 2 years. Correct? For the first 2 years. Then after that we add our 20,000. From there we have to calculate the investment within 2025 and 2026, which is 1 year. Also add 10,000 after 2026. Correct? Then now we can calculate for the remaining 2 years. You see, we're breaking it into 3 parts. So now, let's start with our first 2 years. So with our first 2 years, remember, what are we having here? We have A, which is P into 1 plus I divided by M, N multiplied by M. So we have 30,000. 1 plus, remember if you're saying 10 divided by 100, you're going to get 0.1 divided by 12 because it's compounded monthly for the first 2 years. For the first 2 years. Then we're going to get our calculation there. So now if you say your 30,000 into 1 plus 0.1 divided by 12 to the power of 2 multiplied by 12. Sorry, you're going to get 36,611 rand, 73. That is the amount that you get at the end of the second year. It means at the end of the second year, that is amount that we get. And what do we do to that amount? We add 20,000. Remember, at the end of the second year, that is amount, it will be there, 36,611 rand. Then we add 20,000 to that amount. Then it means it will now be what? Therefore, the amount there, we add it by 20,000, it will be 56,611 rand, 73 cents. So that is the amount that it will be there in 2025 after depositing 20,000. Correct. Then from there, what do? We now have to calculate this year from 2025 to 2026, of which for 1 year, so that we can add our 10,000 there into that investment. So we can do that here. So now, let's deal with that one. We're gonna have let's just see our third year. Let's just see our third year, because that's happening in a third year, correct? So we're gonna have A, it's equal to, now the amount that we are going to use is this one because it's there in year 2. So we're gonna have 56,611,73 into what? Into 1 plus. Remember now with this one, they said from year 2 to the last year, the interest has changed. Correct? The interest has changed. Interest has changed to what? To 12%. So it's going to be 0.12. If you say 12 divided by 100, you get 0.12. Then now it's 2 because it was semi-annually. For how many years? For 1 year. Remember, this year is 2025 2025 to 2026, because from 2025 we deposited 20,000, and in 2026 February we depositing 10,000. So now if you punch that in a calculator, what are we going to get? If you say 56,611 rand, 73 into 1 plus 0,12 divided by 2 to the power of 1 multiplied by 2. So you will see that at the end of the third year, which is 2026, we are going to have 63,608 rand, 94. Correct? So that's where we will be adding our 10,000. Okay, so we have a question here. They're asking, why did we add 20,000? Let's go back to our scenario. Remember, in our scenario here, look at bullet number 2. Look at bullet number 2. In bullet number 2, remember the first bullet, it says 30,000 is to be invested in, 30,000 is to be invested on 1 February 2023, correct? Then the second bullet says the further 20,000, you see where we're saying further 20,000 is deposited, is to be deposited in February 2025. So if you count from 2023 to 2025, you can check that that 20,000 is deposited after how many years. So you can count, you say 2024, 2025. Then you can see that that 20,000 is deposited after 2 years. Hence now, in 2025 here, after 2 years, that's where now we add 20,000 to our investment. Remember, it's deposited. So I hope you get that one. Then now, from 2025 to 2026, we still have to calculate the interest during that year, because at the end of 2026, there is another 10,000 that will be added. From our scenario here, they're saying a further amount of 10,000 is to be invested in February, on February 2026. So now it means in 2026, we are still going to add our money there. So remember, this amount, it will be in 2026. The amount there, we have 63,608.94. Then from there, we still have to add our 10,000. I hope it makes sense there. Then we're going to add what here? We're going to add 10,000 to this amount. And as we add 10,000, then it will be what? It will be now be 73,608.94. That is the amount that you will be having in 2026. So from 2026 now to 2028, there is no money that is deposited. It means it's 2 years that is remaining there. So for the last 2 years now, we are still going to see our last 2 years. Our last 2 years, correct? Now we can calculate the interest there. It's going to be our 73,608.94 into 1 plus 0,12 divided by 2. Remember, 2 years is remaining, which is going to be 2 multiplied by 2. And one will also ask, why are we now changing interest? Remember, interest was changed. Remember, I said for the first 2 years, the interest was 10%. And then for the remaining years, the interest was 12%. Hence, I'm using 12% there, compounded semi-annually. So now, we punch that in our calculator. It's 73,608.94 into 1 plus 0.12 divided by 2, then all to the power of 2 multiplied by 2. Then we are going to get the amount of 92,929 rand, 60, or we can leave it at 59, not 60, it's 59. 59, correct? So that is the amount that the municipality will accumulate in 5-year time, or in 5-year period. So now, if you can go back to the question says, determine whether the municipality could be able to save enough money for the clinic upgrade at the end of 5-year investment period. So now, we're looking at the amount that was supposed to be estimated. They said for the upgrade of the clinic, they need 95,000. But now, how much are we having there in the investment after 5 years? We have 92,929 rand. So you can see that there won't be enough money to upgrade the clinic. So that will be your conclusion. That you can say the municipality won't have enough money. You can see that they will say they won't have enough money for upgrades. You can leave it here. Remember, you can conclude it anyway, but it must make sense. Your conclusion have to make sense. So now that's how you can conclude there for 6 marks. That's how you answer that type of a question for 6 marks. Okay? So now let's move to our activity 3. So in activity 3, we still have to read the scenario, analyze it, and use our timeline. It's helpful for us to deal with it in this manner. So they're saying Samuel opened a savings account to save for a boat cruise that he wants to go on at the end of 5 years, correct? And then he made an initial deposit of 20,000. Right. So now, the scenario is very clear. Samuel opened a savings account and he's saving for a boat cruise that he wants to go at the end of 5 years. Then now, he deposit an amount of 20,000, right? And then the first bullet says the interest rate for the first 2 years was 6% per annum, compounded monthly. Remember, monthly is 12, and then that is our interest for the first 2 years. Then they're saying, bullet 2, it says at the end of the first 2 years, he deposit a further amount of 5,000. You see now, it's the very same question that I received, where now you still deposit an amount of money within the investment. Okay, and then now it says the interest rate charged per annum compounded half yearly. So you can see that at the end of 2 years, the interest is also charged differently from what? From 6% to 5%. And the question says, determine, showing all calculations, whether he will have enough money in the savings account for the boat cruise that will cost 35,000. Remember, the boat cruise will cost 35,000. So now we have to calculate our money of investment for 5 years, and it must amount to 30. It's not a must actually. We are checking whether the amount will be 35,000 or not, so that Samuel can go for a boat cruise. So now remember, this type of questions, I always advise that we need to deal with our number line. So we are going to draw our number line there. We still have 5 years. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So we're going to do it that way. So we have year 1, or year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. Correct. Then we start with our deposit. Now remember, at the first initial deposit it was 20,000. So it means 20,000 now was deposited into that account. Then now they are saying the interest rate for the first 2 years. It means from year 1 to year 2 we have our interest of 6%, and then it's charged compounded monthly. So our different period there is going to be 12. I hope it makes sense, that one. Then the second bullet says a further, at the end of 2 years now, a further deposit of 5,000. It means at this year, at the end of that 2 year, Samuel also deposited 5,000 into that account. But from the second year to the last year, the interest has changed from 6% to 5%, and it was compounded half yearly. Half yearly, remember, is 2 times a year. So that's how the number line goes. I think this one, it was not even complicated, but you just have to do it so that you understand what you are dealing with. So now, for the first 2 years, that's what is going to happen. Calculating the amount for the first 2 years, remember we're going to have 20,000 that is deposited. Remember our formula, it's S basic, A it's equal to P into 1 plus I to divide by M, like that, because we are now using different periods. So we're going to have 1 plus, remember for the first 2 years it was 6%. 6 divided by 100 is 0.06 all over 12 for the first 2 years. Then you also multiply there by 12. So it will be 20,000 into 1 plus 0.06. You divide it by 12. Then you say 2 multiplied by 12. So we are going to have what? We are going to have the amount of 22,543 rand, 20. Correct? At the end of 2 years. And at the end of 2 years now, Samuel deposited what? Deposited the amount of 5,000. I hope now you understand why am I adding 5,000 there. Then now the total amount there that will be in that account, it will be 27,543.20 correct? That is the amount that will be in that investment account. So now you can see that from year 2 to year 3 there is no any other disturbance. So we are going to calculate for the last 3 years, correct? So calculating that amount for the last 3 years is going to be 27,543.20 of 1 plus. Remember now the interest has changed, correct? The interest has changed and we have followed our statement. End of 2 years, we added 5,000, then the further interest has changed from year 3 to year 5. So it's 0.05 because it was 5%, then it was half yearly to 3 multiplied by 2. So now, as we put that in your calculator to check, you are going to have the interest is 5%, which is 0.05. Then what are we going to have there? We are going to have the amount of 31,941.67. Correct? That is the amount that Samuel will have at the end of 5 years. So remember, this type of questions, they need you to always give a conclusion because they are asking you to determine whether he will have enough money in the savings account for the boat cruise, and that will cost 35,000. So you can see that the amount as we have calculated, it doesn't amount to 35,000. You only have 31,941 rand. So you will say no, he won't have enough money, or you can also say for what? For their boat cruise, correct? So you can say you want to have money for the boat cruise. Then that statement on its own as a conclusion, it has marks there. So I hope now learners understand how does these questions of finance work. They carry a lot of marks. You need to read the scenario with understanding so that we can collect all those marks. Correct. So now, with this one now, they are saying Zain invested an amount of money into an account that earned an interest rate of 6.78% per annum compounded monthly. At the end of 2 years, the interest rate changed to 5.20% per annum compounded quarterly. The value of the investment is 50,962 rand and 58 cent, correct? And then at the end of 3.5 year investment period, correct? So now the question says we must calculate the initial amount Zane invested. So now, in this question, we don't know how much Zane invested, correct? And then they are saying the value of the investment is 50,962. So it means the accumulated amount of Zane was 50,962 rand. But we don't know. Remember they're saying Zane invested an amount. That amount is P. We don't know how much they invested. I mean, Zane invested there. So with all these things that the statement that we have read with different periods and stuff, we still need to identify how much Zane has invested. So that's what we are doing here. We're still going to do our timeline, and then from there we will calculate the amount that was invested, because we do have our accumulated amount. So without any waste of time, let's do our timeline. So remember, with timeline, we are having 3.5 years. So we are having year 1, year 2, year 3.5, correct? So we're going to have year 1, year 2, year 3, and remember, we are talking about years. Year 3, we are talking about years. So here is going to be year 3.5. Correct. At the end is 3.5. Right? So now, what happens here, we read our statement again because we have our timeline, so that we can include the information in our number line. So now here it says, the amount of money was invested. We don't know what is that amount of money. We don't know. We can put it as P. Correct? The P amount of money was invested. We don't know how much was invested of money into the savings account, and 6.78% per annum compounded monthly. Correct? At the end of the second year, the interest changed. It means from year 1 to year 2, the interest that was charged there is 6.78 compounded monthly. Different period is 12 years there. Correct? Different period is 12 years. Fix it properly. Different period is 12, not 12 years, sorry. Monthly, which is 12. Monthly, which is 12. And they're saying at the end of 2 years. So you can see that from the first year to the end of the second year, the interest was charged is 6.78%. Correct? Now, at the end of 2 years, the interest changed to 5.20. Correct? So it means from year 2 to the last year of investment, your interest changed from to 5.20%. And they're saying it's compounded quarterly. It's compounded quarterly, which is 4. Different period, it means it's 4 there. Correct? And they're saying the investment now is, it means at the end, the accumulated amount was 50,962 rand and 58 cents. Correct? For how long? For 3.5 years. So that is basically our information there. Then we have to just put it in our formula and calculate the value of P, which is the money that was invested initially. So now, what do we do here? We're going to have A, it's equal to P into 1 plus I divided by M to the power of n multiplied by m. So in this one, I will show you again another method of how can you calculate this as one without even breaking it into so many years. So now, remember we are having a accumulated amount, which is our 50,962.58 and 58 cents. It's equal to P. Remember, we don't know what is our P. P is the money that should be invested. We don't know how much is that money. Then of what investment? I mean the interest. Now we adding the interest on that amount. So they're saying for the first 2 years the interest was 6.78. So if we divide it by 100, we're gonna get 0.0678 all over. Remember, it says compounded monthly, so we're gonna have 12 here, and we're seeing 2 multiplied by 12. Correct? That is the interest for the first 2 years. And the interest now for the remaining 1.5 year. Remember, from year number 2 to year number 3.5 is only 1.5. So now the interest has changed to 5.02. I mean 5.20. If you divide that by 100 again, you are going to have 5.02. I mean 0.052. So now we multiply the interest for the next 2 years, which is, I mean for the next 1.5 year, which is 0.052. Then it was charged in quarterly, which we divide here by 4, and we're gonna have 1.5 multiplied by 4. So now you can see how I have calculated or how I have restructured this. Remember the interest here, it was charged for the first 2 years, including that amount that we don't know. So everything here is accumulated for the first 2 years. We still multiply it by the interest of 1.5 years. So I just included everything at once. So that's what I've done there. I hope you understand what happened. So now, what do we do now here? We need to calculate the value of P. And by calculating the value of P, it's the simplest mathematics operation ever. You know that where there is multiplication, you just deal with division. It means I will divide both sides by what? I will divide both sides by 1 plus 0.0678 all over 12. And if you're saying 2 times 12, it will give you 24. Then also this side also multiplied by 1 plus 0.052 divided by 4. So if you say 1.5 multiplied by 4, you are going to get 6. So that's what you will be dividing both sides by. Correct? It's 24 and 6. So now you will see that this one interest here will cancel that one there. Therefore, now your P will be, now you just take your calculator and punch everything that you see there. Then what will happen there? You will have 50 1,962.58 divided by 1 plus 0,0678 divided by 12, then to the power of 24. To the power of 24, then it's another bracket with 1 plus 0,052 divided by 4 to the power of 6. So that will amount to 41,197 rand and 43 cents. So that is the amount that Zane deposited into the account, correct? So for 3.5 years. So that's how basically you deal with that. And then this is the end of our lesson. And then make sure that you go through this lesson again and then practice more questions on finance using the method that I've been teaching here. Remember, we learn by repetition. Thank you.